It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Folks, it's probably one of the most heated political campaigns in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm referring to the 29th Senatorial District in our state, where Dave Argel is running against Brian Rich. And Brian is my guest today. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show. Folks, remember, anything you hear today, you can certainly go to our website to learn more about it at ssptv.com. And you could also go to Brian Rich's website, brianrichforsenate.com. My guest is Brian Rich. Brian, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This election is extremely important to everybody, and people need to know who their candidates are, what they stand for. People where you were born and raised, they know who you are, they know of your family. Some people know of you. So to give me a little bit background on who you are, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I graduated from Pottsville High in '77, then I graduated from Boston University, came back to the area. Been working in the family business ever since, growing it substantially from about 100 employees in '83 to about 620 employees today. You know, I'm a father and a husband, and that's
it in a nutshell.
That's pretty much it.
With that being said, okay, looking at your successes in business, Coal Creek Plaza, you know, the developments, the power plants, and energy, you know, you have a lot on your plate. My question always is, all right, you know, here's a guy who has been extremely successful, started from, you know, worked all your life. Why is it that you have decided that you want to run for state senator?
Well, Sam, I'm frustrated by the environment. I'm frustrated by our political environment. I'm frustrated by the problems that aren't being addressed that can be solved. There are problems, but they're not insurmountable. And I think that they're simply not being tackled.
You have a business background, okay? So what will you bring to the table that's not there now?
Well, a problem-solving background. I mean, when you're in business, you're solving problems all the time and dealing with things that need to be dealt with. And in Harrisburg, there's a culture of pushing the problems off to the next generation as opposed to dealing with the problems now. Or pushing the problem off to the next budget, or pushing the problem off to the next stimulus package. So these problems need to be addressed. Otherwise, Pennsylvania is destined for a decline that's similar to the kind of declines that you've seen from, you know, the likes of Bethlehem Steels, the companies that have failed by not addressing the problems that they could address.
Some of the problems that you're bringing up, okay, that you see, first of all, you're saying you're going to run for 2 terms and that's it, because you seem to have a concern about career politicians, okay? Let me address that part. What is your concern about career politicians?
Well, they're vested, they're interested in staying in office generally to become vested in their pension systems, and the Pennsylvania pension system for our legislators is really problematic. But the issue with terms and term limits is, and the need for these guys to stay in office, is that they are afraid to do anything controversial. That we have to do controversial, difficult things from time to time, and when you're constantly interested in being reelected, you're not challenged to do the difficult things. So if people are less inclined to stay in public office because they're prepared to do the difficult things, we might get some progress. We might make some progress.
Well, you know, Brian, I'm going to get into the nastiness of this campaign and address some of the concerns. But, you know, you're not a typical politician, meaning I've interviewed a lot of politicians, okay, from Governor Corbett to Newt Gingrich to Santorum. You name the politicians I've had here. They come here, they're dressed with a suit and tie, they're clean shaven, you know, etc. You are, you know, you're not the typical politician. I mean, why is that?
Well, my wife likes my beard, my facial, yes. But no, you know, if I'm in a bank board setting, or if I were in the Senate, I'd be certainly in a suit and tie. If that's the order of the day, and in a public event I may. But this is who I am, and this is how we operate our companies. We're a casual organization. It's the way society is, and there's no pretense in that. This is how I am. But so I'm not a typical politician. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman that wants to solve some problems. And I wasn't clear in why term limits are important. And I want to circle back on that for a second. And we kind of missed the point on that. And the point is, term limits aren't really that important after I share with you what my approach is. Right now, the reason that our politicians want to stay in office so long is because the legislative pensions that they receive are lucrative, very, very lucrative. Dave Argel, if he were to retire today at 52 years old, he would collect approximately $110,000 a year for the rest of his life from his legislative pension. So if he lives 30 years, that's a $3 million annuity. That's or plus $1 million annuity that's in a nest egg. I mean, all my employees, I got 620 employees, we all have a 401k plan. For us to be able to retire at 52 and draw on our 401k plan, you would need $3+ million in it to have that kind of annuity. That doesn't include his medical benefits on top of that. So he's got about there's nearly a $20,000 annual medical benefit on top of that. So he has this fantastic legislative retirement plan, while the rest of us are out here funding our own retirement plans. Now, if that didn't exist, term limits would become, if that plan, which our elected officials are so interested in being reelected so they become vested in those plans. If we didn't have that plan, our politicians would be more bold in their decision making. They'd be more bold in tackling the problems because they wouldn't be so concerned about being reelected. So I contend that if we were able to limit the politicians' pensions to a 401k style plan, then term limits becomes a much more realistic option for our legislators. They then don't have a vested interest in staying elected. So I think that this message that I'm advancing is why this campaign has become as contentious as it has become, is because the message that I'm delivering, when the electorate understands that our politicians have voted themselves a pensions plan that bankrupted Bethlehem Steel and many other great companies, this plan that they voted for themselves is on the backs of the taxpayer, and we can't declare bankruptcy as the taxpayer because they're going to simply continue to tax us more. And this is the thing that my opponent really doesn't want to talk about it.
Okay, and staying on the pension program, how does it relate then to your commercial states about the pension program and how it's a burden on property tax?
Well, in 2001, the state legislature voted for a 25% increase in the state employees and state teachers' pension funds. At the same time they did that, they voted themselves a 50% increase in their own pension. So it's a beautiful shell game that political scientists advance. Give the rank and file, give the electorate a 25, give the teachers and give the state employees a 25% increase in their pensions. At the same time, they gave themselves a 50% increase in the pensions. Well, that's an unsustainable promise. It's an unsustainable promise, just like the promises that the executives of Bethlehem Steel made to their employees that was unsustainable. And when business slows down and the revenues aren't coming into the state or into the company treasury, there becomes the fiscal problems that we're seeing today manifest themselves in the state. So how it translates into property taxes is that we all talk about property tax relief, but because there's such this large pension burden that they can't afford to cut property taxes because they don't have any alternative to get the revenue.
Folks, I'm talking to Brian Rich, who's running for Senate in the 29th Senatorial District. And when we come back after break, there's some This campaign has turned very nasty. As I said, it's one of the most heated campaigns in the state of Pennsylvania, where Brian Rich is being accused of not telling the truth. Brian Rich lobbied for and received commitments of more than $147 million in taxpayer money for his failed $620 million alternative energy plant project near Frackville. A lot more accusations here made on a flyer that Dave Argyle sent out. I want to ask Brian how he answers some of these questions. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante. I mentioned in the beginning of the program, probably one of the most heated campaigns in the state of Pennsylvania is in the 29th Senatorial District, where we have incumbent Dave Argyle running against Brian Rich. Brian Rich is my guest on the Sam Lesante Show today. Brian, there are a number of things that you were talking about. One of the things you, throughout the years, you have contributed and to a lot of people in the political field, and you have contributed to your opponent, Dave Argyle. You have given him money.
That's true.
And why?
Sam, he's asked for it. He's solicited funds from me. And as a Republican, historically, I've supported Republican candidates. So I actually was one of Dave's largest contributors. It's, now all these allegations come out, but if you simply look at who is all these allegations that Dave made, why did he ever come to me and ask me for any money? But I start to look at the record, and the record becomes clear that Dave hasn't done the job, and that's why I've challenged Dave. And I circle back on the problem is for my employees, for my families, and for all Pennsylvanians, and for the people in our district. This out-of-control pension system is stealing our future, stealing the future of my employees. All my employees and everybody out there that has a 401k plan someday wishes to retire and sell their home, because everybody has a nest egg in their home, and they hope that nest egg and their 401k will give them an opportunity to retire somewhere, maybe warm, in a nice warm climate. But the reality of it is the fiscal responsibility that's at the state level is stealing that dream of retirement for many people, because it's causing their property taxes to climb. But more importantly, Sam, it's causing corporate tax rates to stay high in Pennsylvania, and that's causing CEOs from around the company not to want to relocate into Pennsylvania to create jobs, so that people will buy homes at the end of, you need buyers. You need people coming into the state that are prepared to buy people's homes. So you have this pension system that's causing property taxes to stay high. You have the pension system that's causing a fiscal strain on our system. That fiscal strain doesn't allow for the state to attract corporations, because the uncertainty of doing business in Pennsylvania is too great. So after I look at these realities, this is why I've decided to run and challenge Dave, because he's not addressing the problems. In fact, he's part of the problem. In fact, he voted for these problems. And he'll do anything to stay in power. These guys will do anything to stay in power to protect these legislative pensions.
Now, speaking of that, as I mentioned, this is a nasty election. Okay, I've seen nasty elections, but you have, I mentioned before, there's flyers, plus there's commercials out.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just talked about the 147, and you've from time to time.
To me, if I'm looking at this, if I'm thinking you received $147 million of my money, okay, and it failed. That's the impression I get from this particular.
Well, this speaks to just the character of this individual. He voted for the 47 million. There was 147 million that he characterized. There was one component of that was 47 million, which was a state tax credit. Dave Argyle voted for that tax credit. It was a tax credit that if the project became a reality, as the state offered us an incentive of that we would be exempted from $47 million worth of state taxes until the project became profitable. It was a tax credit, not unlike the depreciation line item on a corporate income.
You did not. Did you get a check for $47 million?
Not a dime.
Okay.
Never a dime.
Okay, and then, I know
Dave voted. And Dave voted for that.
voted.
So he knows that he's lying.
Okay.
He knows that he's lying.
It says Pennsylvania is giving Rich $47 million, so you did not get. But the project you're talking about was the liquefaction plant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and where your brother and where the Rich family is invested millions of dollars of their own money in that project to begin with.
And we're still working on it.
And this is to take our resources to make the gas, which I've had John on my show a zillion times talking about that.
Right.
Now, the Department of Energy approves $100 million in federal funding. Here again, so he puts the both of them together. I'm thinking.
Well, that federal funding, by the way, was the Department of Energy offered us a loan guarantee on a portion of the project, which was it represented about 10 or 20% of the project value. Maybe, I'm not sure at this time, but it was a $100 million loan guarantee. There was no money transacted, not a dime.
And if my memory serves me correctly, okay, having your brother John on the show, that particular plant, if it would have been built at the time, would have created 1,000 jobs to begin with, okay, construction jobs. Then with an average of 300 and some, 400 jobs, at healthy paying jobs, 20, 25, 30 bucks an hour, okay? Right. And he's still working on that project. But here's another thing. In this particular, Brian Rich was a defendant in 2 federal lawsuits, including, now these are serious charges, racketeer influenced and corrupt organizations. You know, Brian Rich knowingly and willingly devised schemes to defraud stockholders. Brian Rich knowingly aided and abetted with other defendants in schemes to divert profits.
Well, I mean, the reality of that is, and he knows the reality of it is, we took over a company, and in the lawsuits that in the shareholder fight in 1992 that ensued to take over Reading Anthracite, which I took over and that I'm today the president of, the former owners, we got in a lawsuit. They made these allegations. At the end of the day, I was awarded $1.2 million in punitive damages against the plaintiffs to pay for my lawyers because these allegations were outlandish. They were outlandish and they were false. And so if go to Judge Kahn and look at the record from 1992 or 1993, we were completely exonerated. Dave knows these allegations are not true. And Judge Kahn found in our favor and awarded us $1.2 million to pay for our legal defense.
So we're going back to 1992 here.
He went back to 1992, yes.
Okay. $5 million in stimulus funds will pay for windmills in West Monterey Township, okay? What do you think about that?
Well, just read it with the same vigor that you read the last one, because it says Brian Rich took.
Yeah.
What's it say?
Republican State Senate candidate Brian Rich says he opposes stimulus money, but he took $5 million in taxpayer money from the Barack Obama administration for windmills.
That's a lie. It's simply a lie. I'm not going to even sugarcoat any of these things anymore. That's a lie. He knows it's a lie.
Well, why did he print it if it's a lie?
Because he's desperate. Because he's trying to hang on to his $3 million pension and his perks and all the jobs, and to mask his record, which there is no accomplishment. Let me just address that again. The $5 million stimulus money. He calls them windmills. They're wind turbines, and they're a significant part of Schuylkill County's electric industry. Schuylkill County's single largest export is energy, and we should be proud of it. A state center should not diminish the value of our local job creators and our local industries. Wind turbines and the wind generating assets in northern Schuylkill County are a great business for not only for Pennsylvania but for the country, and we're doing a good thing. Those wind turbines, that stimulus money that he's referring to, was I made an application to look at those dollars because my competition was looking at getting those stimulus dollars. And when you look at those stimulus dollars and the strings attached to the government, government's programs, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And we chose not to take any of it. He knows there was never a dime taken. He knows it. But to simply not look at the plans and the programs that are offered up by the government is a foolish thing to do as a businessman. So he knows I looked at it. I rejected it. He voted for Rendell's stimulus budget. They did it. I looked at it, I rejected it on moral grounds because the strings attached to it were too great. So he knows it's a lie, and
So when I tell people about looking at candidates, and I said this is a nasty campaign, I've never seen in a while the negative advertising that's coming out. Okay, how do you feel about this negativity?
I'm appalled by it. I want to speak to my accomplishments. I come out here. I was instrumental in building 2 power plants. I built the Cold Creek Commerce Center. I built residential developments. I built an engineering company. I built a great family. I have great friends. I'm optimistic. I'm a generally optimistic person, but we have to deal with our problems. Dave Argel is a political scientist. He's a doctor in political science. That he got his degree while he served in the legislature, and he doesn't want to address his lack of accomplishments. He doesn't want to address what he's done. He doesn't want anybody to focus on the 34% hike in his pay that he took, or the 51% increase in the pension that he took. He doesn't want us to focus on it. That's because, and that, it's reflected in this barrage of attacks. I mean, you talk about, for instance, there's another one sitting there. Let's talk about the wrongful death one as a for instance.
I'm going to get to that right after. Folks, I'm talking to Brian Rich. As you can see, there's a lot to be said about, this 29th senatorial district and the race. Brian Rich, if you need to know more about what we're talking about, go to brianrichforsenate.com. We'll be back right after this. Folks, thanks for staying with us. I'm Sam Lesante. Remember April 24th, folks, whatever you do, please get out and vote. My guest today, Brian Rich. He's running for state senator in the 29th senatorial district in the state of Pennsylvania. And folks, it's a heated campaign. One of the things that we were talking about is being nasty. You've been accused of there's been a wrongful debt lawsuit. That's in one of his TV commercials. And what's that about?
Sam, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a perpetrator. The police report says in the attempt to steal copper from one of our plants, a thief was electrocuted and was killed. And towards the end of the statute of limitations period, a trial lawyer sued us. First they came to us and said, we're going to sue you for this electrocution. And let's settle out of court. I said, well, I'm not settling out of court. That's why I have insurance. If you want to prove it, I said to my insurance company, you fight this to the very end, because I'm not going to be extorted for money of a thief stealing copper off our property. It's the equivalent of somebody coming into your house and stealing, comes into your house to steal something, and he slips on a puddle of water and breaks his neck and dies. And some lawyer sues you for that. So I can't, frivolous lawsuits are part of the problem. We have to solve frivolous lawsuits. So when I told my insurance company, I said, you defend this because I'm not going to be extorted. That's what I've done. I'm defending it, and that lawyer will never see a dime from my company or me. And so, Dave wants to utilize this as an accusation. I just want to say it, Sam, that the FOP, for the first time, the Fraternal Order of Police endorsed me in Pennsylvania. I got the first time they ever endorsed a candidate in a primary. So I appreciate that, because they know I'm out for them.
If I wanted to, and I tell people to get educated, as well educated from Dave, educated from you, learning about this. But when I see and I hear these things, okay, I would wonder, okay, but for me to, as you're clearing some of these things up and stating them, if I go to your website, okay, I could learn a lot more about that, correct? If I go to brianrichforsenate.com, it's a nasty election, and it's sometimes, how do you feel about, what you will be able to bring, to the state versus what Dave is?
Well, I'm not taking the pension. And this is the tip of my spear is the pension issue, because we have to solve it to solve all these other problems. I think property tax reform becomes a relatively easy fix once we fix the pension debacle. So pension reform, pension reform, pension reform. That translates into term limits. It translates into, because now the legislators don't have a vested interest, and so then we get citizen legislators. We get people that care instead of career politicians that are there to build their own nest egg. But let me be specific, I guess, on the pension. And how do we fix property taxes? We fix the pension hole by having all of our legislators have 401k plans like us. So you lead by example. You lead the top in the government lead by example. Then new hires go into a 401k plan. Now the bleeding is stopped. I would then propose legislation that would eliminate property taxes on everyone except people that have children in school. And when their last child graduates from school, from their local school, that they would then be exempted as well from property taxes. The revenue shortfall that would occur as a result of what I'm proposing would be made up in a sales tax increase that would be spread across the Commonwealth, with the exception of food and clothing. But underlying that idea is and it only works if we're able to stop the bleeding at the pension level. Mm-hmm. So in any business, when I built the power plant, for instance, they said to me, what's the plan? And I gave them the plan. And they said, well, what's this expense item? The one that you can't control. Well, they're not going to lend you the money. That's the pension line item. You have to fix that. You have to control that number. I see we're running out of time. So,
Brian, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Once again, folks, April 24th, very important election. Learn about the candidates as much as you can. Go to brianrichforsenate.com and find out all the facts. But most importantly, folks, please vote. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show. Watch us 24/7 on ssptv.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.